Hi there, I'm Kate Souper, I'm the chair of the Friends of Meersbrook Hall, and this is Rhiannon Thomas, who's the heritage lead. We've just got a few minutes, and we basically wanted to give you a very brief overview of what we're trying to do and what's been happening in the last couple of years. Essentially, Meersbrook Hall, also known sometimes as Meersbrook House, has been used as Sheffield City Council offices for the last 65 years. And then in 2014, we heard, people in the local community heard that the council were thinking of selling the building for development, and as about 10 years previously, another community used building had been sold off. The local community was really keen that this didn't happen, so started a local group. So the first meeting had 60 people, the next meeting had 150 people, so a lot of community engagement to try and stop the building being sold. And it was only a bit later on we actually realised the important Ruskin connection, because at that time everybody involved had only been around for probably less time than it had been Sheffield Parks offices. So we're just going to go, Brianne's going to talk through some of the heritage stuff. Oh, the only other thing I need to say is, yes, with Community Development Trust is, because we're kind of a very newly formed group at that time, the council weren't very keen to engage that closely with us, but we've got some really fantastic partners in Community Development Trust, who are a local community group, development group going for about 20 years now, and they've actually in the process of redeveloping a series of really fantastic Sheffield board schools and doing some really high quality redevelopment there. So once we joined in partnership with them, the council were then very keen to get involved and consider handing the building over to us on a lease to develop it on a combined community and business use. So at the moment we're at the process of, we're just about to put in a bid to Heritage Lottery funding in the next month or two. So hopefully in the end of January we'll know where we are and exactly how we're going to be developing things.
Thanks, Kate. I'm just going to give a very, very brief overview of some of the history of the building, because as we've said, the Ruskin Museum has been housed there since 1890. However, we know that the estate that the building's on was around in the 14th century, although there's some huge gaps in our knowledge. The first documented evidence was 1759, when Benjamin Roebuck, who was a banker and involved in the steel industry, bought the estate. Then his fortunes waned, and he sold it to the Shaw family, so who were also involved in banking. So the house and the park that it now sits in basically reflect sort of the fortunes of Sheffield and reflect the growth of the steel industry. People who lived there kind of looked out over their smithies along the River Sheaf. And then the Shaw family, it had been passed on to three sisters who all died without children. And it was at that point that it coincided with Sheffield Corporation looking for more land to give to the growing population of Sheffield. And they bought the hall and the park in 1886, which also coincided with the St George Museum in Walkley needing bigger premises. So it all kind of came together, and in 1890 the Ruskin Museum was opened. And we've got loads of work to do really on the history of the building, but the most documented part is the Ruskin bit really. That's just to give you an idea of how the museum looked. I don't actually know the exact date of this picture, but this was when it was a sort of a well-kept park with museum sitting in the well-kept grounds. And we know that this was the plan of the museum when it was opened, and it's largely the hall's in two sections, and the building, the museum section is largely still in this footprint. There's been a few alterations. The picture gallery, for example, has now been divided into three pokey offices. The Carpaccio room is now the toilets. So we're fortunate that we have these plans, and that any of the renovations and developments we do will kind of obviously work with these, bearing them in mind, the history of the building. And just a couple of other images there. Genevieve Pilley was one of the curators. So this is the picture gallery, which is on the upper floor. This is what's been subdivided into 3 offices. As you can see, there's a glass roof, which is now slated over. The wooden beams remain, but the ceiling's been tiled, giving it quite a different feel, as you can imagine. So, but it's great that we hope that the council, when they were occupying the building, have mainly covered over the fabric of the building rather than destroyed it. So we're hoping that the plasterwork remains above the ceiling tiles, but that remains to be seen. And this was at the far end of the picture gallery. You'll recognise this picture, anyone who's been to the Millennium Galleries. It's the bunny picture that Clive referred to earlier, which must have looked pretty special, I think, in this room. And again, just the entrance to the mineral and sculpture room. And that's how it looks today, downstairs. We don't actually have any historical pictures of the print gallery, but that's basically, the whole of the building has this kind of corporate, sort of industrial, institutional look to it. So we've got quite a lot of work to do to make it into a sort of valued, thriving hub. This is the Mineral and Sculpture Gallery, just to contrast. This is obviously, as it's been left by the council, contrasting with what it was in the Ruskin Museum. But then, so just very sorry, I know we've not got much time. Very briefly, our aspirations for the future include sort of basic things that local people have asked for, like a cafe, toilets, space that they can hire out. But because it's such a large building, we're also very aware that we need to have some kind of sustainable business plan to support this kind of activity. So we're looking at how we can do that with sort of ethical type of businesses, and working with, hopefully, with craftspeople and looking at studios and that kind of thing. Our aspirations for the building are to really take on Ruskin's ideas of craftsmanship and do it and renovate it to a really kind of high standard, thinking about the kind of activities we have there and whether they'd be, things that he'd approve of. So we've already we've been in the building for 5 months, and we've already got about 20 or so adult learning classes happening. So some days there's sort of 100 or so people coming through the doors, which reflects the visitor numbers in sort of 1900. They had about 121 as a daily average. So we're pretty pleased with where we're going. We've had 1,000 people on the open day, and so I think that's it's really something to kind of build on for the future. And we've started work with the local school, which
finally, I'm a governor of one of the local schools. We've got at the moment 800 primary age children that go to school within a couple of minutes walk of the park, which will be going up to 900 in the next couple of years. So we've started developing some special days where we're taking the children to be asked to get involved with their local history projects. We've been taking local children around the park, into the hall, and also to the associated wall garden, and hoping that down the line that we'll be able to maybe use some of the produce from the organic kitchen garden of the hall, and use that in our cafe. And it's just a way of developing art projects as well, so the Y6 children will be going into the Millennium Gallery, seeing some of the collection, and we're also developing our own Ruskin collection and asking the school children to do sketches and artwork, and we're actually going to exhibit them in the Mineral and Sculpture room, get the parents to come and see it. So just trying to introduce Ruskin's ideas, themes and art back into the local community and grow it up from a very young age, and do things that way as well.
And that's just the final shot of the hall, looking quite, well, that was about 2 weeks ago, all those leaves have gone now, but it did look glorious.